session of today. So I am very, very, very honored to tell you all that we have a very important person with us today, our speaker, Mr. Abhinav Thakur. He is the Managing Director of Accurex BioMedical Private Limited. He has a wonderful experience in medical device industry. So we welcome you.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
All good, all well.
All well. Great. So we'll be talking about point of care diagnostics.
Yes.
So over to you.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be making my presentation. Just give me a few seconds. Yes, Swati, my screen is clear?
Hello?
Yes, Swati. You can see my screen, Swati?
Yes, I can see it on screen. Please go ahead.
So today I'm going to be talking about a very important segment in medical diagnostics, that is the point of care diagnostics. And this segment is one of the fastest growing segments at about 40% growth. And we will understand more in the presentation why it is becoming such an important segment, not only for the companies that are operating this segment, the labs that are operating this segment, but also for the patients. And the whole crux of the point of care market comes down to test and treat. So the doctor is testing and he's treating at the same time. So we'll go further and see how this benefits the patients. So we have seen that today the healthcare costs are increasing phenomenally. However, it's very interesting to know that the lab test or the pathology test that a patient pays during his treatment is only 2% of the healthcare spending. And majority of the decisions, 70% of decisions comes only after the diagnostic report. So from the time the treatment is done, the therapy is given, the time the patient is entered into the hospital or discharged is based on the medical diagnostic reports. That's how important these reports and these tests are, but they represent only 2% of the healthcare spending. And recently we have seen that the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros, also said test every suspected case. And he said, we have a simple message to all countries, test. You cannot fight a fire blindfolded. And we cannot stop this pandemic until we don't know who is affected. So again, in the current pandemic situation, again, look at how important it is to test. Because if you're not testing, it's like a blindfolded, and you cannot fight this war against COVID-19. Since you don't know who's a positive, and then you cannot do the trace and treat. So the three T's, test, trace, and treat, starts with the testing first. Again, it shows the importance of diagnostics. Looking at some success stories of India, since today we are talking about Atmanirbhar. So India has always shown that it's pharmacy to the world in the pharmaceuticals industry. India is the third largest in terms of volume and 13th largest in terms of value. And India has the second highest number of US FDA facilities outside the US. And labor costs in India are lower than other manufacturing hubs by up to 40%. Even recently, you must have seen how the US has wanted to source a lot of the pharmaceuticals from India. And with the COVID vaccine coming in, even Bill Gates has said that India is going to play a very important role if the world needs to get the COVID vaccines, as India is the largest producer for vaccines. And we have a good pool of scientists and engineers, as we all know. And another success story, if you look at, India has done extremely well when it comes to IT, information technology. Again, in information technology, we are known as the capital of the world. In pharma, we are known as pharmacy to the world. And if you look at now coming to medical devices, we definitely can become a medical device manufacturing hub for the world. So if you look at the success stories recently, you have seen the swab manufacturer. So India was importing 100% of the swabs from China and other countries. And there was a big shortage of this during the lockdown because of supply chain constraints. And the Indian government decided to partner with the private industry to start manufacturing swabs in the country for taking the COVID samples from the nose or from the throat. So within 10 days, the government connected with Johnson and Johnson, which is producing earbuds, and Reliance Industries for the polyester fiber that is used in the swabs. And they were able to manufacture these at 1.7 per unit. They brought down the cost by 1/10. So this again shows that when we make in India, we can really help to give low cost healthcare. And this swab manufacturing led to viral transport medium manufacturing and supported that. And today, even in viral transport mediums, which are used for the COVID sample transport, again, India is highly competitive. And today, we can even supply outside the country to the rest of the world. Looking at COVID and rapid ELISA test manufacturers, again, we had a lot of people, manufacturers who came in and started manufacturing these tests. COVID-19 RT-PCR manufacturing is also happening in India. So you look at from the high end RT-PCR even up to the sample collection, the VTM, the swabs are being made in India. And this has really helped to reduce the cost and make it way more affordable to the patients, the end users. There are other success stories like Arvind Eye Hospital. Arvind Eye Hospital is a hospital based in Coimbatore, and it has been featured in a Harvard case study for providing the lowest cost cataract surgeries in India. This is again a very interesting case study that shows the power of India when we get into manufacturing. So Arvind Eye Hospital, they started providing service from doctors at a very nominal cost by making the entire process streamlined and like a factory floor. But the challenge coming for them was the cost of the IOL, the intraocular lenses. And they were able to lower the cost again by 1/10 because they started manufacturing the IOLs themselves instead of importing them. So again, you can see the power of manufacturing in the country is to reduce the cost, and in the end, that will benefit the patients. So this is where Make in India is going to take us, and with the current government focusing on Make in India, they have set up 4 medical device parks all across the country, and they're also setting up API parks so that India is less dependent on import of APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients. And they're also giving a lot of incentives for making in India for the medical device manufacturers and the API manufacturers. So now coming to the main theme of my topic is about point of care diagnostics. So point of care diagnostics is diagnostics that's done outside the laboratory in most of the cases. It's done by the bedside, it's done in the clinics, or it could even be done at home. So point of care diagnostics can fill the gap between test and treat. And in India, it's especially very important because 70% of India's population lives in the rural areas. And the dichotomy is that 75% of medical infrastructure is in urban areas. Nearly 86% of medical visits in India are made in rural areas, and majority traveling more than 100 kilometers to avail healthcare facilities. And 70 to 80% is paid out of pocket. And this leads to a lot of families losing their land they sell their land to undergo medical treatment, and this pushes them below the poverty line. So majority of our population lives in the rural areas. However, 75% of medical infrastructure is in the urban areas. And in the rural areas, they travel more than 100 kilometers just to see a doctor on average. And this is our healthcare pyramid, if you look at it. So our majority of our healthcare is in the sub-centers, that is the primary health centers, where the population is less than 5,000, which you can see at the bottom of the pyramid. And in India, we have totally 1,61,000 of these. The primary health centers are 30,000, community health centers are 11,000, and the sub-district hospitals are 2,000, and the district hospitals are 1,192. So again, you can see the biggest touch point for patients in India comes from the sub centers and the primary health centers. And these are the places that can be made very strong for diagnosing disease in advance so that the patients don't have to travel all the way to the sub district hospital or the community health centers or even the district hospital. We all must have seen the crowding outside the government hospitals. And a lot of this crowding is happening for rural patients who are coming to the cities to get treatment because they're not able to get the treatment in their village. Can diagnose the disease before it becomes very serious, where the patient needs to come to the urban areas, then it can really help in reducing the healthcare burden in our country. And this can be done by linking point of care diagnostics, the POC devices, which are the small, portable, easy to use devices in the primary health centers, in the sub centers, so that testing can be done easily. And you don't need a very skilled manpower, you don't need a lot of infrastructure, you don't need power availability all the time. This was a study done that shows how, by using point of care diagnostics, the cost benefit is done. So if you look at the left hand side, this is the current scenario where of an average rural citizen in our country who on day one goes to the doctor, and on day two he goes to the lab, and day three he goes back to collect his report and go back to the doctor. So in total, he spends 3 days for just getting a treatment, which could be a simple OPD treatment. And on the right hand side, you can see the proposed model, where on day one, he goes to the doctor and he gets the report and the prescription on the same day. So in the end, the patient ends up saving cost of travel, because a lot of times if the patient is sick and they have to travel to the nearest town, they will have to travel with someone, a caregiver, a family member, or a friend, and that cost adds up too, because that person has to travel with the patient and probably stay back in that city for getting the treatment. So the cost benefit is 1,350 versus 1,950, so a saving of 600 rupees. And if the person is traveling with somebody, it's a saving of 1,300 rupees. This amount might seem small, but for someone living in the rural areas, this can turn out to be a big amount. And if you multiply it by 70% of our population, it runs into crores. And keep in mind, 70% of healthcare is paid out of the pocket. So this amount is going to be a huge savings for our healthcare system. Other benefits are having lab results at the point of care enables the physician to initiate or adjust a course of treatment. So if you go to a doctor and he can do your diagnostics at the point of care in his clinic, in the physician's chambers, then he can immediately prescribe you medicine, and he can also adjust the course of the treatment immediately. So this leads to better relationships between the doctor and the patients, because you're getting faster treatment to the patients. You're engaging with them and you're giving them even behavioral counseling. So as soon as you get the report, you can even counsel the patient on the behavior of the patient, versus the patient getting the report the next day, and in a lot of cases only emailing the report to the doctor, and then the doctor is over the email prescribing to the patient or asking the patient to take certain kind of medication. Instead of this, the treatment and testing can be done on the same day. This is just a model we built up of an example if just some basic tests are being done in the gym. For example, you can do diabetes monitoring, HB1C, that is your 3-month blood sugar. You can do your blood glucose, you can do your blood pressure, you can do your SpO2 and your lipid profile and your hemoglobin. All these tests can be done easily in a gym, and that's why you're getting the health conscious people coming to the gym regularly. And for them, they would not think twice before getting these tests done, because it's so convenient for them. They can just go in there and do the testing. So even if a simple thing like this is started and the option is given to the customers of the gym can test the customers, and it will be a win-win situation for both the parties involved. I have personally seen when I had gone to Hyderabad that they have started testing at the railway stations in Andhra Pradesh, which is very interesting to see. That at railway stations they have a kiosk now where you can go and test your blood sugar and also test your weight, your BMI, etc. So the culture is building up towards this, and it's interesting. They said they get about 200 people a day to just come and do the basic test on the health kiosk. And as this culture will build up, I feel we'll see more of preventive tests coming in. And especially now with COVID, health has become the number one priority for most people. So you're seeing that because health is becoming a bigger priority, people are going to go out and do more testing, and they're going to look for more point of care testing so they can get the results in their busy schedule. For example, even I've seen at airports now there is blood sugar and blood pressure being offered in India by a pharmaceutical company. And even in malls in the US, now they have started offering testing so that while you go shopping, you don't have to go separately to the doctor or to the laboratory, and you can do your testing in the mall itself. And this model has become very successful in the US where they're calling it urgent medical centers. So people who are working and they have less time at hand, so they end up going to the doctor, which is located in a mall or in another area. A lot of times they're also located inside pharmacies. So within chemists, you will find the doctor and the testing facility. So this makes it very convenient for patients. And the more convenient you make it, it's seen that the more patients end up going to the doctor and doing the lab test because it's not inconvenient to them. And especially for people who will have to take a day's leave to go through this entire process, they would prefer to do it within the same few hours. Especially for our country, the challenge is we are facing a shortage of trained laboratory technicians. So as per the WHO statistics, 38% of laboratories were not having trained technicians. This is a big challenge. So you can have the best of machines bought by the government in tenders, but if you don't have the human resource, trained laboratory technicians to run these machines are of no use. It's like having the best car, but you don't know how to drive it. So there's no point in having the car. Similarly, is the case in our laboratory analyzers, which are complex and need training to be run. Or they can end up even giving the wrong report, which is even more dangerous. So here comes in point of care testing, which doesn't need a laboratory technician to be trained very well. You don't need a laboratory technician. You can even train the nurse, or you can even train anybody else in the healthcare system to do the point of care testing. For example, ASHA workers are now trained to do hemoglobin testing, and they can carry a hemoglobin meter with them and they can do hemoglobin testing. Because in India, it's estimated that 50% of women are anemic. And women who are anemic during pregnancy, they carry a huge risk for themselves and for the child. So ASHA workers in many states are trained to carry out hemoglobin testing. So this shows the simplicity and the ease of use for these tests. Another big challenge we face in a lot of parts of our country, we don't feel this in the cities. You can see this happening in a lot of rural areas where the power goes for hours and maybe even for a day. In these cases, how do you store the temperature sensitive reagents which are used for diagnostics? And if the reagents are exposed to temperature, they get spoiled and they will not give the accurate results. So in this case, point of care testing plays an important role because they need to be stored at room temperature in most of the cases. And that doesn't is a big boon for especially areas where there's low power availability. As Mr. Rani spoke in his last session about AI, so AI and point of care combined can address the large population of India. In AI, artificial intelligence, one of the most important things is data. Data is king. The more data you have, the better your AI algorithms will work out. And this is a boon for a country like us with having 1.3 billion population. We can get huge amounts of data. And this data will give us a real big edge in making AI work here for a healthcare system. And especially now with the COVID pandemic, there are very few patients who are visiting the hospitals because they're scared that they'll get an infection. As you can see, these hospitals, especially in the public sector, are extremely overloaded as there's a shortage of hospitals. And patients visiting hospitals for routine checkups or even for elective checkups and surgeries are scared to visit the hospitals. So in this case, the load on these hospitals can be reduced by shifting the testing to the primary health centers or the community health centers. So this will reduce the load on these hospitals and reduce the risk of people getting infected. Here is a simple diagnostic device that has become really popular nowadays, the pulse oximeter, and it's a solution at your fingertips. This can really help people who are at home during COVID, who are probably not very sick, who are asymptomatic, so they can monitor their oxygen saturation levels so that they go to the hospital only when it's required and when they are in an emergency scenario or they're falling sick. And when they are not unwell, they can stay at home self quarantine. So this helps in reducing the load on the hospitals, and at the same time, it helps the patient because the patient can go to the hospital when he really needs to, and not at a later stage, at an early stage, before his lungs are affected. He can go to the hospital. And this study was done at Rajiv Gandhi Government General Hospital, which said an intervention at an early age of detection of dropping oxygen saturation levels could prevent deaths. So you can see a simple device that can be used at your fingertips, how critical it plays a role. And if you look at the cost of it compared to the cost of treatment, it's negligible. Another very exciting area is saliva testing. So this is being done in Japan. There's a research going on where Japanese have developed a saliva test to detect COVID-19 in 30 minutes. So can you imagine that what our world will be with when there's a saliva test for COVID-19, and it'll just make traveling, international traveling, so much easier. So right before you want to board a flight, the travelers at the airport itself can take a saliva test and they can then board a flight. So the safety of other patients is there on the flight. And at the same time, you're not spreading the infection from one geographical area to another geographical area. So very exciting developments happening. And I hope that this test will come to the market soon. So it will help us to fight this pandemic. Talking about some general trends on the diagnostics, there is research papers that have mentioned in the next 20 years, maybe we'll not even have labs anymore for general testing, like your glucose, cholesterol, etc. The entire lab, as you can see in this picture, will be in a chip. And this chip will have all the tests which are embedded in the chip. And this chip will be inside your body and it will send your glucose levels, your cholesterol levels, your lipid levels to your mobile phone or even to your doctor, your healthcare provider. And there's already research happening on this where there is a lab on a chip product come out from a company. This has become very common nowadays. It used to be something we used to imagine that is going to come out pretty soon, and it has been in the market now for about a couple of years. And this has become extremely successful in countries like France. This is being reimbursed by the government. So this has grown by almost 300 to 400%. That is continuous glucose monitoring. So as you can see, this is a patch that you can attach to your skin and it has a lifespan of 72 hours and it will continuously, every hour, monitor the glucose levels in your body and send the levels to your mobile phone. So anytime you have a drop in insulin levels, you know that you need to take your insulin, and you don't need to keep pricking yourself with needles, and this is pain-free. It is attached to you, and you can go about your day. You can go in the water. You can go for a run. You can live a normal life and have your sugar checked on a regular, continuous monitoring basis. Then there's research being done, even a contact lens that can have a sensor based in it, so that your glucose can be measured in the tear of your eye. Research again being done on biosensor tattoos. These are microchips that are printed directly on your skin, and it's a health sensor that can monitor the temperature of the wearer, the hydration levels, and it can even withstand showering and swimming. So this is important for athletes who need to monitor their temperature or their hydration levels when they're taking part in competitive sports. Malaria, again, it's a big disease in our country, and there's research being done on laser scanning so you just put your fingerprint and you can detect the malaria in your blood. This is something that is actually happening, and Apple Watch, which has been launched, has an ECG, and it's approved by even the US FDA. And there are stories about people's lives getting saved. So this is an article I picked up from a magazine where these 5 people talk about how the Apple Watch has saved their life, and emergency care could come to them at the right moment, even though a lot of them have not suffered any heart ailments in the past. But the Apple Watch could detect it, and it ended up saving their lives. Again, a great achievement in the wearables market. And as our guru of technology, Steve Jobs, he has said, I think the biggest innovation of the 21st century will be at the intersection of biology and technology. A new era in beginning is coming. I'll be showing you this short video on what we could expect in the future to come in the healthcare industry. And it's a very exciting to see that we can get these kind of technologies that will help us to remain healthy.
Technology has given us an unprecedented window into the human body. But on a day-to-day basis, we're still in the dark about our own health. We are changing that. What if instead of fearing the worst when you notice something out of the ordinary, you could identify the condition yourself? Getting the right diagnosis would save you worry.
It says it's roseola.
And an unnecessary doctor's visit.
Rest at home, it's okay.
Instead of hearing about a viral outbreak on the news, imagine you got an alert that was tailored to your family's needs. It would also give you advice about what to do next. What if you had a way to identify what was wrong right away?
It says it's 103.8.
A way to get all of the information you need to understand the situation. And in serious cases, you would know when and where to seek help. We're building a way for people to check their bodies as often as they check their email. It's all possible, and it's only the beginning.
Interesting. So this is what a lot of companies are now working on, and there's a company in the US is working on tricorder. So the tricorder is something we have been seen in the past in Star Trek, where is this machine that you put next to the body, and you can see the vital parameters and what are the issues being faced. And there's actually a company in the US that's come up with this product called the tricorder. So pretty soon, in the next 10 years, we should definitely see a product like this coming out. And in the end, I would like to say thank you for your time. And we are in one of the most important industries today that makes a very big difference in the lives of people. And especially in the COVID pandemic, you can see the healthcare industry is playing an extremely important role. And there are so many, you say, the COVID warriors who have lost their lives. as soldiers have lost life in wars. There are doctors and medical professionals, nurses, ward boys, and medical device manufacturers also who have risked their lives to go in the lockdown and with COVID around, to go still to go to work and have tested COVID positive. So we are playing a very important role, and we are really honored to play this important role in this fight against COVID-19. And as I said, when you have health, you have everything. When you do not have your health, nothing else matters. So let's, as healthcare professionals, focus on getting health back for us and fighting this COVID-19 war against the pandemic. Because in the end, if nothing else matters really, if you don't have health. So with that,
Well, that's very true, Abhinav sir. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to hear it from you. We have few questions. So the first question is, what are the challenges in implementing POC? What are the challenges that you face?
the challenge is that in our country, still it's not an accepted concept, and I think there's not enough awareness created. So it's up to companies like us to go ahead and create more awareness and inform the doctors that such tests are even available in the market. So a lot of times there's no awareness that these tests are available. So just creating awareness is important. As you can see in the Western countries, for example, the US, which is the biggest market for this point of care testing market, is around 25% of the market. And it's well established, and the patients understand, the doctors understand the advantage of it. So I'm sure with time it'll catch up over here. Another challenge is that a lot of times the POC testing is not looked as an accurate test.
Yeah.
So that's why there's not a lot of confidence in it. With the right certificates, like the US FDA certificate, the CE certificate, or the MDR, I think this thought can be removed from the medical fraternity, and they can start accepting point of care diagnostics.
Um, just what you said, I would like to emphasize on one more part. In many parts of India, we see many people in many segments of our society who still do not follow the culture of regular routine health checkups. So do you think with POC, it will change this culture and it will bring some sort of awareness among people?
Yeah. So what we have seen recently, that corporates are doing this a lot for their employees, because they have seen, as per research done, that a lot of people end up losing work hours because they're sick. So corporates want to take preventive health checkups for their employees. So we have seen corporates using POC where they're conducting camps in their office, and the employees are coming and getting tested. So we are seeing that happening, and with convenience, definitely there'll be more testing happening.
And when you talk about Made in India, like in your presentation, you emphasized on Made in India project. So how will you think India's medical system is able to fight with Corona with this much of insufficient resources? Do you think it looks like a challenge for companies like yours?
Not really. So if you look at the entire parrot supply chain in India, we have an excess supply. So if you look at the masks, the PPEs, or sanitizers, even testing kits, ETMs, there's enough supply in the country right now. And we are also requesting the government to even open up the exports market so we can serve the rest of the world also with our products.
Thank you so much, Abhinav. Sir, it is wonderful to have you here. And thank you so much.
Fine.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we will move further. And in our next session, we'll be having another speaker who will talk about a different topic. So once again, I would like to remind you all that we have so many tools on your right and left side of the screen. Please use it. Visit the launch area, interact with each other. You will get a chance to interact with all the exhibitors, other visitors who are here. And apart from that, please feel free to ask questions. We have this discussion window on the right side of your laptop. Please feel free to ask any question. We will be happy to answer it. Soon I'll be joining you in the next session. So I'll see you there. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Abhinav.